With this background, we start with our natural methods of contraception, the introduction of which I've given you before. So natural methods, they fall into either the fertility period, so fertility awareness methods, the withdrawal method, lactational amenorrhea method, and of course abstinence, which I don't consider as a method of contraception. But anyways, yes, it's always included, so let's just talk about it. So fertility awareness methods, question has been asked. Okay, describe. See, what happens is that whenever this contraceptive topic is given in the exam or is available as a topic in exam, what happens that students usually they focus so much on things like COCPs or OCPs or emergency contraceptives or copper T devices and so on and so forth. They miss out on the basic points, and suddenly a question of 10 marks is asked on fertility awareness methods, and you're not even remembering the name of all the methods. So this is just going to give you that 5 minutes insight that you remember the methods at least, and then you can of course elaborate yourself. So this is what I say: read very smart. You know that you can forget the points. Once you remember the points, nothing can stop you. Remember the points. So if you're studying, let's say, fertility awareness methods, at least know what are the fertility awareness methods. Okay, there are 5 of them. At least you should know the 5 of them. Just write them down, okay, on the sheet of paper. So the examiner is happy with you. And you're happy with yourself. Just imagine getting a 10-mark question or 5-mark question on fertility awareness methods and forgetting about those methods. Or missing 2 out of those 5 lot, or 6, 3 out of the 6 lot. It's not going to work. So every question is important in exam. Every topic is important in exam. And through this small class, a quick revision will be done so that you cannot forget all these important, silly but important points, I would say. Let's talk about the rhythm method first. Okay, so you have this rhythm method. You have the basal body temperature method. You have the cervical mucus method, and symptothermal method along with standard days method, right? Symptothermal usually encompasses all the things together, and standard days is standard days and bead wala thing. Now, can anybody tell me anything about the rhythm method? In the chat box, guys. Let's have a little bit of discussion. Okay, all right, I'll go ahead and tell you. So, for a typical cycle, okay, there are. Yes, obviously. Yes, correct. Absolutely right, Suja. So, if for any typical cycle, let's take a 28-day cycle. So, female usually knows, that 14 days before the next period, she's going to be in that zone where she can get pregnant. Most of the patients who come to your OPD, I think all of them, if you're not working in a government setup, government, I don't want to say anything because you have mostly the uneducated population coming from the villages and all over there. But if you have a private setup or a corporate setup, most of the patients who come to you, they know about their fertile period, considering their regular cycles, right? So that's the basis of rhythm method, that the first day of the fertile period is calculated by subtracting 18 days from the length of the shortest cycle. Okay, so let's not go into that detail, but of course, when you have to write down on the exam, this is what you will write. So first day of the fertile period, calculate 18 from the length of the shortest cycle. For example, you had a cycle of, let's say, not 28 days, but 26 days. You had a cycle, okay? Just subtract 18 days, so that becomes the day from which you will start, abstaining from being with a partner. And the last day of the fertile period is calculated by subtracting 11 days from the longest cycle. For example, you had one cycle which was like 31 days, minus 11. So till 20 days of that cycle, you have to be away from each other. So that's the rhythm method, okay? And if you use it perfectly, the failure rate is only 9%, which is very, very encouraging, okay? So that means you're abstaining at the most fertile period, which is very smart way of handling things, because you're not altering the basic physiology, you're not taking any external agent. So, many people have this conservative beliefs, who don't want to practice contraception from outside by changing the body or the physiology of the female. This is a good method. Basal body temperature method, well, you record the temperature every morning in the, without taking any food item, okay? And an increase of 0.4 degree, Fahrenheit, that's very important, 0.4 degree Fahrenheit or 0.2 degrees Celsius above the baseline temperature is the time at which you're ovulating. And at that point in time, you do not have to be with a partner, right? So if you've already had intercourse before that, congratulations, you can get pregnant here as well. right? So the day of ovulation you can easily miss by this. So it's not a very successful method, but yes, of course, it is one of the methods to know about the ovulation. This is a very good method, cervical mucus method. For everybody is also called the Billings method, and everybody who has kind of done a little, paid a little attention to the cervical mucus in the cycle, you would see that during ovulatory phase, and that this starts right before the ovulation as well. So you're pretty much in the safe window period if you understand the right point, right time at which you see the cervical mucus thin and watery. That means you're around that phase in which you're ovulating. So just avoid intercourse that time. Okay, the typical failure rate is between 1 to 25% and 0 to 2.9% with perfect use. So typical is 1 to 25%, and ideal is 0 to 3%, which is again very, very encouraging. All right. So these methods, they allow the user to identify the beginning and the end of the fertile period, which you want to know. So what you do is that you see, can you see over here, I've included the beautiful slide over here. So dry phase, sticky phase, you'll see this kind of mucus, and creamy phase and stretchy phase, the clear phase, this is the period at which you're fertile. So just be away from the partner. So this slide will teach you everything. And a symptothermal method includes all these methods together. So it combines the calendar calculations, the basal body temperature charting, and the cervical mucus for monitoring, right? There was a time at which Billings method was also asked, just Billings method, okay? Now, standard days method. Standard days method, you have to be a little agile while listening to me. Why? Because this can be asked. This was covered properly in your, basic textbooks. I didn't think of, jumping through it. A short note can be easily asked on standard days method, and you need to draw this figure. Very, very important. Can you see over here? I'll give you this figure first. So this is that bead or the rubber thing that keeps moving on. This is the start of the period. Can you see the red bead? It marks the first day of your menstrual period, okay? And then there are brown beads. These brown beads, they are the places at which you're safe. And this white beads, see, all the white beads, do not have unprotected sex, okay? If you don't want to get pregnant. And over here again, you have the fertile, the safe period starting over here. So this is the whole circle which will help you understand which days are fertile, which days are not. So once you've been through your period and there have been 2-3 days passed, then you become suddenly you enter a stage at which you can be fertile through all these 10 days almost. And then again, you have 10 days over here through which you are again safe. So the standard day method is a kind of calendar method only, okay? And it's comparatively simpler to use because you have something to mark, okay? You do not usually forget it. It can also be used if cycles are, it can only be used if the cycles are regular, never shorter than 26 days or longer than 32 days. Now that's the drawback of this period. And there's also the drawback of period, of the calendar method as well. For those patients like PCOS patients who do not have regular cycles, who have longer intervals, it's very difficult for them to get to know when was their fertile period. So in the same way, this method also has a disadvantage for all those females who are having shorter cycles or longer cycles, okay, because it doesn't work in them. There are 33 colored cycle beads and a movable rubber ring on the string. The first bead is black with a white arrow. I just showed you that, right? This one, black with a white arrow on it, okay? And a movable rubber ring on the string. The next one is red, okay? This is the red one, start of your period. The next 6 are brown and the next 12 are white. I just showed you that. 13 are brown again. Each one except the black one represents a day. On the first day of the period, day 1, ring is put on the red bead and then it finally keeps moving ahead. Okay, this rubber bead or the ring keeps moving ahead. So the brown beads stand for the safe days and the white bead stands for the unsafe days. So this has got a perfect use efficacy of 95% and a typical use efficacy of 88%. I'm talking about efficacy over here, not pregnancy rates. So the efficacy is pretty high, 95%, and typical use efficacy is also pretty high, which is 88%. Then we come to another fertility-based method, awareness method, which is called as coitus interruptus. The problem with coitus interruptus is that at the level of the time of ejaculation, it's the male's, it's in the male's hands, to avoid pregnancy. And if the male is a little lax or demotivated or not up to the mark, not withdrawing at the right time, the patient stands a high chance of getting pregnant. So the failure rate with perfect use though is 4%, but with typical use it goes as high as 22% because nothing is in the hands of the female. Of course, she can use spermicidal jellies or diaphragm and all those things, but finally it is the withdrawal in the hand of the male part, which doesn't really work well in Indian scenario. Yes. And then we come to lactational amenorrhea, guys. This is an oft-repeated question in your exams, has been asked in different ways, in different, marks, has been asked for 5 marks also, has been asked as a physiology of, breastfeeding and contraception, has been asked as a 2-mark question as well. So you need to just know this and make this figure. Okay. The physiology is over here. Mechanism of action, very, very important. So if at all, if anything is going to be asked on lactational amenorrhea, it's going to be the mechanism of action, right? So what happens in case of lactational amenorrhea? See, there are increased levels of prolactin because of lactation, right? What do they inhibit? They inhibit the LH, okay, not the FSH. So partially it inhibits the ovarian response to both these gonadotropins. So prolactin, if it's high, it suppresses LH but not FSH. Now FSH is the one which recruits the the follicles. FSH is the one which is going to finally lead the cohort of follicles to grow and mature. That means rupture to a certain extent also can happen. Without the level of LH being high, rupture will not happen, right? So that's a safeguarding principle. At the same time, ovary, because of high prolactin level, is kind of inhibited from being acted upon by these gonadotropins, especially FSH. So the level of FSH might not be in the hand of prolactin, but prolactin definitely reduces the level of LH, which obviously if the surge is not there, the ovulation will not take place. And at the same time, it makes the ovary also a little stunted to the response of these gonadotropins. That's the idea. That's the physiology. So as a result, prolactin remains high, ovary produces little estrogen, no progesterone, and ovulation, menstruation, both are affected. And that's the idea behind this lactational amenorrhea period. Now, there are certain important components, okay? First of all, patient has to have complete amenorrhea. It's not that, oh, I had a period 2 months back and I'm not having it again. Maybe I'll have it next month. That's not lactational amenorrhea. You never had a period after, giving a birth. Okay, so has to be a complete amenorrhea. Exclusive breastfeeding, very, very important, including the nighttime feeds, because suddenly the prolactin level is going to dip down. So including the nighttime feeds, the baby should be less than 6 months old. And again, I tell you, the first 3 months you can still follow it, but the next 3 months are slightly questionable, even when you're talking about lactational amenorrhea period. So the first 3 months is okay, but the ovulation does come back after 6 weeks. Okay, so ovulation comes back after 6 weeks. Menstruation can come anytime between 8 to 10 weeks. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of lactational amenorrhea? Very, very easy, right? Advantages, it's a natural method, can be easily trusted upon immediately postpartum when you have no other method to give to the female. There is no extra cost, so you can use it in low resource settings like in India. Healthiest food for the baby, so it's at advantages to the mother and the baby, making a bond between the mother and the baby. Protects the baby from so many infections. Causes involution of the uterus. And the disadvantages of that, it does not protect against HIV with so many other contraceptive methods. You can write this statement down in almost all contraceptive methods, right? Can be used maximum up to 6 months. Maximum, I'll say. And the effectiveness of LAM is not certain. It's not certain.